Hello, friends. This is Arcelio Hernandez. I am a Costa Rican lawyer in San Jose. And today I want to talk to you briefly about a question that I get often, uh, which is about getting divorced in Costa Rica. And I want to talk about the specific case of people who uh, get married in Costa Rica, but one of the spouses lives abroad. So, for example, I'm not going to give names, of course, but for example, today I got a call from a man, and he came to Costa Rica, discovered the beauty of our women, and fell in love with a beautiful Costa Rican woman. But their purpose was to live in the U.S. because they decided that they didn't want to live here because the man has his job in the States, and so they decided they want to live in the U.S. But that's not so simple. But they start a green card process, like a visa residence process in the United States, and there are interviews at the embassy. But they get married here in Costa Rica, and then they start this process. So some couples don't survive the test of time because, of course, being separated, living in different countries as a couple is not easy. And then at some point, some of these couples they get to a point where they say, "Well, I'm not happy with the situation. It's taking too long, or whatever, or they have problem," and they decide they want to get divorced. So how do you go about getting divorced in a case like this? The man lives in the U.S. He's a U.S. citizen. He came to Costa Rica. He got married in Costa Rica. The wife is Costa Rican, and she has not been able to go to the States because they're still in this process. They were still in this process of the residency application. And along the way, they encountered some differences and problems, and they decided they don't want to continue. They want to get divorced. Okay, so this particular scenario presents a few uh, situations that you have to take into consideration. Okay, so there are always two ways that you can get divorced. One is by mutual consent, by agreement, and the other one is by filing a lawsuit and litigate the divorce. But even if you do file a lawsuit, the first thing that the court will do is call you to a hearing where they'll try to make you come to agreements, or not force you to, or but the judge will try to facilitate, mediate an agreement. And if that fails, then the process continues. You have hearings with witnesses, you present your evidence, you make your conclusions, and there will be a decision by the judge. Now, what points may be the object of discussion in a divorce by litigation? Well, typical cases, alimony. The spouses have a right to ask for alimony from each other. And in Costa Rica, that right cannot be renounced. So I get sometimes calls and they say, "Oh, we signed a prenup, and we agreed that none of us would get alimony." Well, that could be a problem in Costa Rica because the judges here consider there's only one valid way where people can renounce to their right to alimony, and that is at the time of a divorce by mutual consent. At that agreement, which is done before a notary public, the spouses can say, "Okay, we waive a right, we renounce to that right to request support, spousal support from the other." That is the only situation where our courts accept this waiver, this giving up that right. You can't do it preemptively, so to speak. So I know that in the U.S. it may be different, but I'm speaking of Costa Rican law. It is considered something you cannot renounce to, except in that case of divorce by mutual agreement, and at that precise moment. Okay, so but that topic of alimony has to be dealt with, whether it be in an agreement or in litigation. So if you cannot come to an agreement, you'll have to file a lawsuit, and you'll have to ask that the judge decide on this point whether or not each party conserves that right to request alimony. It may be that the judge in the divorce case will grant a very general, abstract right and say, okay, the spouses they maintain the right to ask for alimony from each other, and then you would take that to a specialized court that deals with alimony. So that's one point. When there are children involved, if you have minor children, that's something you cannot uh, put aside. You have to include the matter of custody. The law says you must decide about the custody of minor children. That has to be decided on. You can't just put it away or put it off for later. No, you have to decide at the time of divorce who's going to have custody. Now, shared custody has become the preferred method in Costa Rica since 2020. We had a reform in the law, which is a very positive thing. And but sometimes visitation will be decided because there will be a primary custody, a custodian, and that's fine. I mean, but you have to decide on the matter of custody. It's a must. It's a requirement. And then there are marital assets, and this can always be a point where it's a challenge for the couple to come to agreements. It's often a discussion a point, but you can also waive the right to marital assets distribution. Basically, according to Costa Rican law, the property that was acquired during the marriage and while the couple was together, at the time of separation, each of the spouses has the right to 50% of the value of that property, whether it be vehicles, assets of any kind, real estate property, but not the property that was acquired before the marriage, and not the property that was acquired freely. For example, if it was a gift, a donation, or an inheritance, that would not be considered a marital asset in Costa Rica. Only property that was bought for a price, and while the couple was married and together. Now, that part about being together sometimes raises some difficulties. Does it have to be that they live together? Not necessarily, because sometimes there are situations where the couple, for example, the one I was explaining, the husband works in another country, but they're still together. They share messages of love, I love you, things like that, and they're supporting each other emotionally, and that would be considered, in my opinion, that they are together, even if they're not living under the same roof for a period of time, because the husband, in this case, works outside of the country. So it doesn't necessarily have to be that they live under the same roof, but they do have to have a relationship that can be considered a marital relationship. Only the property acquired during the marriage, while the couple was together, would be considered a marital asset in Costa Rica. So those are the main points. I mean, you have the civil status. You will ask the court to pronounce you divorced, to break the marriage bond, and that would change your civil status in our national registry from married to divorced. You would ask the court about custody for children and also child support. That's also important. Whenever you have children involved, you can't avoid some discussion or some points because they have to be protected. Costa Rica protects children. So their custody, their child support, that has to be dealt with in these processes. Sometimes you could say in an agreement that the matter of child support will be decided by a special process in the specialized court. We call it pension court. So but you have to say something about it. You can't just ignore that part. And the matter of marital assets, you could say that there were no marital assets acquired, but you have to be sure that that's the case because you have to present certifications to the court regarding recordable property. So any property in your name, you'll have to provide it to the court in both names of the spouses. And then the court will determine whether or not that's a marital asset that has to be distributed or decided upon. So these are the points, these are the basic points that must be covered in a divorce proceeding. As you see, it's not that simple. First, you have two types of divorce: divorce by agreement or mutual consent, and divorce by litigation. They are different processes. We have an article in the new Family Process Code. This is my code that I published. I worked in Congress, and some ideas, some articles here were my ideas, and I'm very proud about my work in Congress. And we made some progress. But there's a specific norm regarding asking the court, 289. This is the process to ask the court to approve a divorce by mutual consent. You see it right here. So If it's by mutual consent and there are marital assets or children, you have to ask the court to approve that agreement. We have a new norm that if there are no marital assets, if there are no minor children, no disabled children, nothing like that, then you could avoid the approval of the court. You could file directly in our civil registry, and the officer will look at it. Will You have to provide certifications. He will see that there are no marital assets. He will see there are no minor children, and the registry itself will record that divorce. Okay, so but that's a special case where there are no marital assets at all and no children, and that's a special case. That is a new thing in this family process code. And then you have the other process, which is divorce by litigation. If you live abroad, for example, how do you go about filing here in Costa Rica? Well, there are several methods. You could go to the Costa Rican consulate and grant a power of attorney to an attorney such as myself that I could file that divorce representing you, and then the court will notify your wife that lives here in Costa Rica, and that will get the process going. We can get sometimes the court to agree to have hearings done over the internet, so you don't necessarily have to appear in person. Or I could represent you if I have a power of attorney. I can represent you in the hearings. But some parts of this process you have to do in person, whether by Microsoft Teams, for example, which is what the court uses here, or because they have a license for this specific platform, or in person. But for example, answering questions under oath, that has to be done personally, and so it could be over the internet or in person. But for most other things, a lawyer can represent you, filing documents, making motions or requests, and filing appeals. All that stuff you can do with a power of attorney. The power of attorney you can also I have clients who have done this. They come here to Costa Rica. Sometimes they just stay for one night. They come to our office. They sign the paperwork here, and then they leave. So those are two ways to do the power of attorney. You could go set up an appointment with the Costa Rican consulate, and it's a little bit involved. They ask that you send them the text. We help our clients prepare the text of the power of attorney, photocopies of IDs, certification of marriage. They will ask for a few things, and then they'll give you an appointment. And you'll have to pay about $100 in consular stamps. So that's one way to do it. Or there's a third way. You could have a notary travel to your country to collect your signature on a power of attorney also. So there's three options right there to have somebody here represent you in one of these cases. And the first thing, like I said, the court will call you to a hearing to try to come to an agreement. So if initially you cannot come to an agreement, it doesn't mean that you won't come to an agreement at all. It just means maybe it'll happen at the first hearing once the court, calls you to that hearing. And we try to encourage those agreements because it saves time, it saves money, and it saves a lot of pain sometimes. It's not nice to have witnesses who are most of the time are relatives, people close to you, have to testify in court about very unpleasant things. So it's always better to, whenever it's a reasonable agreement, we recommend it, and we try to help people come to agreements. Thank you very much for listening. I hope that the information that I shared with you is helpful. If you have more questions, you can always contact me. I will leave my email in the comments. It's basically info@bufetemusio.com. Bufete is Bufete. Bufete. Musio is my family name, Mussio, bufetemusio.com. And we'll be very happy to set up an appointment, set up a Zoom call that we can have a consultation and give you more guidance on your specific case, on your specific situation. We'll be very happy to help you. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.